Okay, thank you everyone. We'll get back into things. So we've obviously back now in public. So we're now on item A of the progressing decisions on the financial aspects. And this is page 8 of the agenda. And table 3, which we'll go through, just quickly note. Table 3 is the key budget matters approved in principle by Council to date. So as you can see, there is a total of 27 matters which have been given that in principle decision. Now I'm going to say, is there anything from all of that that members have a question on or would like to? Page 13. Any questions or anything, any thoughts at this point? Obviously we'll be going to our meeting in December where we start to make some final decisions and trade-offs as well. So there's still that opportunity. But Councillor Mitchell?
My thing. Here we go. I was looking at this list last night, and the questions that arose in my head actually were about insecurity with the new government's position on a lot of these things. Not that they're decisions that we should change in anticipation, but things like speed review, even the FOGO system. There's a few things in there that were requirements of the last government. That even if they're still requirements, the goalposts might shift considerably on a few of them, I think. So, you know, I think I didn't really question any of the decisions we made on any other basis than that, on kind of feeling a bit unsure about what may change in, you know, and the transport speed review one, for example, is one that has been explained to us that our decisions are made and I think have been approved by Waka Kotahi, so therefore they stand. However, if the government significantly changes what is required of councils, we might be a bit of an outlier based on this old system of what was required of us by the previous government. So kind of paying a bit of wait and see with that stuff, I think, to figure out what we finally do. Not suggesting that we change LTP figures or anything like that, but that was the biggest kind of question mark for me.
No, I think that's absolutely right. What I'm going to ask the team to do, particularly in the new year, because I don't think there's anything we can do even by December, though there may be some things that get announced, is for any report to basically have a column which includes, you know, is this position relevant to government policy funding, and any, you know, what's the current state of play at that point in time of what we know. So I think if we can just build that into our table, and some of the projects will have no relevance to government policy or funding, but we know that there are a number that do. So I think that's just really helpful for councillors when they're going through the information. Okay. We'll move through on to table 4, which is budget matters for consideration by council requiring a decision. So that is just the, we've covered the Three Waters CapEx.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, are we going to go through the items in the table 3, or is that done? Because I did have one question around the urban renewal. We were going to get some more information around our obligations under the IAF funding as to what was the minimum we could do.
Yeah, we're certainly not going through it on 27 one by one, but if there was any questions which will help with the further decision making in the process, yeah.
Yeah, so I had some questions around that coordinated urban renewal. We were hoping to get some information back about what was our minimum that we had to do around the IAF funding, and also smart libraries. I think there was a conversation at the workshop about getting more numbers around how widely used is the smart libraries program.
Yeah, I think those the questions should have been captured at the time. That Andrea, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just on smart libraries, I can let everyone know that 8% of our loans are through the smart libraries shared system. So it means that 8% of the books that are asked, the resources that are asked for from our community, come from other libraries. They're not all necessarily things that we don't have. Sometimes it's a copy of something that we have, but there is a waiting list for. So 8%, and the proposal there was that the cost of couriering those books around the region for individuals is a significant benefit to individuals, and if we weren't in smart libraries, they could still get them through an interloan system, which was $15 per request, which is more a user pays system. I think that covers most of the questions that were asked at the workshop.
Okay. And just generally, I know that if there were questions which, assist us with our decision making through this process, that will come back through. But don't want to create false expectations. So just if we could just explain what the thoughts are on the process.
Well, they should really be in these papers today. I think, Kara, do you want to talk to the urban renewal one?
Yeah, kia ora, Mayor and councillors. So just in relation to the coordinated urban renewal budget bid, there was a request for, I think it was $300,000 and $450,000 a year. We have gone to Kāinga Ora to seek some clarification around what their expectations are, and generally put, they see that we are, that their requirement is that we deliver on the 3,500 homes as which was a part of the IAF bid. And their expectations, or their general expectations, would be that we, stand up a project team to ensure that we can deliver those outcomes. However, taking heed from the comments and the position, initial position from councillors, was that the reprioritisation of budget and existing resource would be the better way of delivering on the coordinated urban renewal program. And I have on that basis, I have asked my team to explore how they might reprioritise effort and FTE functions and responsibilities, as well as budget, to deliver on our obligations under that agreement.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Just in regards to if we're getting the right numbers, I just question around 7, 8 and 9. Are the numbers guesstimates at the moment for those? Like, demolition cost of the wharf, do we know if that's definitely 6 million or could it be more?
That's been covered in the reports. Nothing's progressed since then. So, yeah. It's the same information as what was decided on, but on the basis of those reports. Yeah. Okay.
And I just had one other one, which was around the strategy and policy, reducing the specialist service costs there. It came up at the workshop as well, of trying to get a bit more information about what the work plan was.
About the 27, where we've already made decisions. So we'll go on to that table.
Head to table 6.
Yeah. So anything else on any of the matters where we've already made in principle decisions? No. Okay. Now we'll move through to table 4, which is the bulk water cost. We've covered the 3 water capex in a separate paper. So just the bulk water costs. Any questions on that? No. Okay, so the officer's recommendation is to approve that change. We don't really have much of a choice. So I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mitchell. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, so moving through to table 5, which is just the reserve investment strategy, page 17 of the agenda. It's noting the financial contributions are being added to offset debt requirements. Okay, all those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Happy? Yep. Okay, table 6. So this is budget matters for consideration around savings or reduction of services. We should be clear, not necessarily just savings. So we have 4 items here, and we can go through each of them. So the first one is pretty straightforward in respect to what it is suggesting. Is there any questions on that? Okay, so we'll just get an indication, then take them again as a whole like we did before, so we'll say yes. The only thing I would like to propose with that is with the $100,000 for the first year of savings, 50,000 will just be going to the savings bucket, and that 50,000 be moved to the events fund coordinator, the event funding coordinator, which is in the budget bids, and that would basically put an additional 50,000 in that year one. So I believe it would take it from, is it 210 to 260, and it was already proposed to lift up from there anyway, to give some more capacity in that year one. Are people comfortable with that, if we were to put that forward? Yep.
Question, if I may, would that be intended for the delivery of Matariki events in our city, even though they're not necessarily council events?
That 50,000, no, but I would imagine that particular function would have responsibilities around assisting Matariki events within its remit generally. Yeah, but it wouldn't be tagged for Matariki, I suppose. That would still be just, basically we're going from 150 to 50, and that 50,000 just supports community Matariki events. Yep. Okay, if there's comfort with that, officers can take that away for when we come back in December. Okay, moving through to item 2. Councillor Dye, you had a question on this one?
Yeah, the question came out of the workshop, just what exactly is coming up in the work plan that we may need specialists for. I know over the last 3 years, there's been a number of things that have come to the table and we've said, oh, can we do this? And the answer's been we don't have the capacity or the staff to deliver that program without taking something else up. So this kind of work has stemmed from that. And I know looking at Andy's forward work program on the policy finance, there's a lot coming up. There'll also probably be a lot coming up that's not in there now from the new government with, I think, around the likes of Indigenous biodiversity and freshwater management. All these things are going to be changing the game a bit as well. This role here really was to increase our capacity there, and I just worry if we pull it out, we're going to be kind of stuck not having that extra help when we kind of need it more than ever.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple of responses to that. One is that not all of the policy development work is funded through the strategy and policy budget that's before you for consideration. So for example, Indigenous biodiversity, reserves investment strategy, and some of those other policy pieces are very much funded from other budgets within the organisation. So it's not going to have an impact on that. In terms of understanding what that budget has been used for. So from the past financial year, it has been used to fund representation review advice and assisting us with the establishment of the independent panel. It's provided some short-term support for long-term plan project management, and has also been drawn upon for independent advice and review of some of our research and evaluation pieces. What we've suggested through this process to mitigate some of the impact on the existing work program is reduce the amount of savings that we're proposing to be taken. Originally, there was $100,000 before you to reduce the budget by 100,000. That's been reduced to a reduction of 50,000, and we believe that within that we're able to deliver the current work plan and the existing priorities. Of course, it will mean that there is potentially less flexibility in terms of short-term pieces of work, but we have a fully staffed strategy and policy function, and we believe we can mitigate those risks.
Thank you. So happy for that saving or reduction to be put forward? Yes. Okay. 3, which is the 10% reduction in Māori order funding. Councillor Shaw.
I'm strongly against any reduction in this funding for Māori order. Having been to the Wellington Airport Awards where we were celebrated community groups who all contribute wellbeing and really positive outcomes for our community. I think times are pretty tough for our community at the moment. We know that. And I'm totally against any reduction in this sort of funding for those groups that serve our community.
Thoughts, Councillor Parkin?
Yeah, likewise. I have significant hesitancy over doing this, given that we have a multiplying factor. The majority of the groups that work within this fund also have a significant degree of volunteer hours. So it's not as if we're just paying for one person to operate. We're actually allowing the community to leverage on this, and I think we actually get better value for money off this than some other things.
Councillor Morgan?
Kia ora. Yes, so I just have to concur with the two councillors as well. And I think, you know, with a really hard budget and really horrible decisions we have to make, we have to look for any little silver linings. And this is potentially one of those that can give back to our community and to all of those people working really hard in that wellbeing space. So, yeah, it would be a shame to lose it.
Any other thoughts to the contrary? Councillor Edwards.
Oh, just for the sake, well, not for the sake of being for the contrary, because I do believe it. I believe we need to demonstrate to our community that we have gone really hard on every single cost that we can and tried to spread the load, spread the burden of pain, and a 10% reduction, while very regrettable, demonstrates that message.
Councillor Brown.
Just want to add that when we're cutting in a time of having to pull back, it's these groups that work on very little that support the community when we're going through hard times as well. So it's one area that I don't support cutting back.
Okay, any other views, particularly in support of the reduction? Otherwise, so the total fund, well, is around 840,000. So it would be $84,000 reduction of that fund is the 10% cut. Yeah. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, question for officers, because I think this came through Communities Committee recently, which I don't serve on. Was this year, was the community funding allocated in full, or was there some underspend there?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there was a small underspend this year and last year, which was then allocated later in the year. I think it, from memory, this year is about $22,000.
Okay, any other thoughts? Based on the comments, it would be a no, we wouldn't put this forward. But again, I just want to give everyone the opportunity. I mean, I'm more inclined to personally agree with Councillor Edwards, just because I think that, you know, it's an $840,000 fund. It will still have an impact, there's no question, but it's not like this is a wholesale removal of this funding. Just means that some groups may not have as much to give. Councillor Stallinger.
I wasn't intending to speak, but I would support the view put forward by Councillor Edwards.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I think I'll have to side with the multiplier effect that we get from this investment in our community. Noting too that in recent years, because a lot of other funders are tied up investments, a lot of other funders have reduced their disbursements into our community groups, which kind of makes them, if anything, more dependent on the funding that we have available for them. And noticing too in the last Māori order funding that the money's already been spread more thinly. There aren't as big grants to as few groups as there used to be. So I think there's a big demand from our community groups for funding through council, and that's only probably actually increased in recent years due to the other funding sources not being as generous as they once were.
Okay, I think easiest way to move forward is we can just put it to a show of hands, just to give an indication. So if you like to support the reduction, please put your hand up. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, okay. Not support the reduction in funding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, Councillor Brown.
I just want to make a comment. You had decided that the community sector is going to be under a lot of pain. They've already been given the word that they have to cut 6%, and we're going in at 10%. And the social investment framework is coming in, and that's about bringing all the funding into the larger groups. So the little groups that we deal with are going to be out in the cold. So now is not the time for us to be placing 10% reductions on the community.
I just want to be careful though of this is a 10% reduction of an $840,000 fund. This is not, 10% across what we do in the community space, but just, Councillor Parkin.
And just like to comment that being on another funding panel, which I won't mention because the results haven't necessarily been announced, but I do know that some of those groups that were asked to apply for that fund had been applying through the Māori Ora Fund. And so while there was an underspend that officers have reported, there isn't necessarily all of that money that's being allocated. And there were some that were applying to the fund, the panel that I'm on, that were not a good fit. And so if anybody was basing their reason on we could drop that fund and nobody would miss out, I think the answer is actually definitely people will miss out. And that the pain of inflation, etc., is only just starting to be felt by some of those organisations, and they will need our support to get through it.
I love it when we can get to a point where there is general consensus, but this is one where we're quite split. I mean, is it more palatable, particularly for those councillors who do not support the 10%, to say put a 5% reduction forward, or is it an in principle no reduction? So just to test to see if there is, yep.
I would actually be pushing.
No reduction for me.
Sorry. I would have actually been encouraging us to increase this fund.
We do have one councillor who isn't here, which, and I don't actually know what his views are. And well, I mean, I can use my casting sort of vote on it, but it just doesn't feel like it's. We've got time, so let's kick this one to the 12th of December meeting. Particularly, we know we do have one councillor who's not here, and I think I quite value Councillor Briggs's views on this, because he's been quite heavily involved in the community funding space and reviews and changes in the past as well. Yes.
Just to note too, we've discussed once or twice today already putting things into our consultation paper. I think that this is a classic example, if we can't agree amongst ourselves, where we should be taking a steer from our community on this one here, regardless of what we decide. It could be in there as a potential further saving and seek some feedback from the community on that. And I think we'll get some pretty strong feedback potentially on both camps.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take that away, and we can come back on this on the 12th of December. Okay. Yes.
When that does come back, can we just get a bit more information about what groups have been funded and how much, if that's all readily available? It'd be quite useful. Like, I really am on the fence with this.
I think it's all reported through our committee papers. So any councillor who wants to take a look at that, I think it's there. It's Yep.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to answer Councillor Dyer's question, it's on the Hutt City Council website, because I'm just looking at it now. So there's a spreadsheet.
Yeah, there's I think
of all
it's even
successful applicants.
Yep. Great. Okay, so we'll hold that one for now. So basically, we just have the one last one, which is the Etu Trust general agreement with that approach. Councillor Stallinger, then Deputy Mayor Lewis.
I can't quite remember where this discussion got to before, but we had talked about rather than this fund to Etu, they be engaged in relation to some of our large infrastructure works. Probably the obvious one is Riverlink, where we have a budget of some tens of millions of dollars for streetscape. I can't recall what exactly is in that, but it would seem like a great use of their skills in supporting the outcome from that project if we were to engage them through that, and perhaps a very small amount of that infrastructure fund in replacement, in essence, of this cut here.
Yeah, it was any other comment or update on that sort of different approach? Yeah.
No update, except to say yes, that we did discuss that there is now a contingent amount in each of our big infrastructure projects, which is for public art, and that E2 could be involved in conversations around how that's spent.
Okay, great. Deputy Mayor Lewis?
Thank you. The other conversation that we came up with was that E2 themselves, that this fund is only for, don't fund them for 2 years. Was it 2 years? And then refund them. I'm of the mind that I hear what officers are saying with a percentage of projects going toward art and engaging with E2 Trust. But reality is projects will stop, officers change, things change. There's nobody independent looking after the art in our city, and there's no amount of money that's going, if it's only tied to a project, it's where that's at. The rest of the city is ignored, and there's not an eye over keeping art to the forefront and making us a vibrant city. So I'm against actually cutting this fund altogether, but I would support stopping it for this long-term plan, the 3 years, and putting it in again the next long-term plan.
Cool. Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, and just thinking about this, I know we have to tighten our belt on a lot of things, and this is not a large amount of money that we're talking about here. Having just recently visited Whanganui, I was really pleasantly surprised by the art trail up there, and I think it's something we're lacking here, and I think if we pull this money away, we may never see another decent piece go up somewhere. So I'm against any reduction, but I quite like the idea of Councillor Lewis's idea that we just hold it in recess for a short period of time and bring it back.
The only comment I'd make is we potentially, in my view, could be doing more in the public arts space, but in a more effective and better way. And I think the Riverlink comment and what Councillor Stallinger raised is probably our biggest opportunity. So it's maybe taking the opportunity to say, hey, here's a 3-year period to look at those opportunities, and actually E2 Trust could work and maybe even get more outcomes within those budgets themselves, and then we can reassess in 3 years' time. Does that sound like a fair approach? Okay, great. So we'll say yes. Yep.
Clarification there, can we keep it in the budget after the 3 years? So we put it in the long-term plan and we can still review it at that time, but it goes in the LTP for past 3 years.
I think you could, but at the end of the day, it's going to be the council of the day that decides whether it continues. So I would say you'd take it out, but make it clear that it be reviewed at the next LTP. It doesn't really matter, to be fair. It's because it's a new council. They'll, it feels a little bit weird taking it out for 3 years and then building it into the plan for the 7 after that, because we're suggesting that it's coming back, but we're not saying that's the case. We would look to review it and then decide what we do from there.
As long as we kind of give the message to the E2 Trust that, times are really tight. We're having to do some drastic stuff. We not completely abandoning the worth that you guys bring. So as long as that message gets through, either way, yeah. I'd hate to see them disband and thinking that council's never going to do anything again in this space.
No, the key thing will be how do we do things differently and take that approach, and then we can review that after 3 years and decide. Yep.
I understand where you're coming from in terms of that it is the council of the day in 3 years' time when they're reviewing the next LTP. However, I think that E2 Trust have asked us to put it on hold. They've come to us with that proposal. We're doing them a disservice by not indicating that we around the council table at the moment sit in favour of doing that, putting it on hold, recognising the financial pressures that we're under, but also recognising the importance that the art stays for the city. And yes, by all means, we can review things, but at the same time, by planning to have it back in there during the rest of the LTP, it does send a clear indication that we still value this, and it's a valued work that we want to see continued.
I'm guided by the room, but I feel like we're splitting hairs a bit because, we're saying we're going to take a different approach. that approach may be far more effective and successful and cost effective, we don't need to put the money in for those later years. It would be a point in time where it's reviewed. I mean, it sends a stronger signal that the money's coming back. It's guided by the room. Any other thoughts? Deputy Mayor Lewis, Councillor Salinger.
I'd support what Councillor Parkin is saying, and I think too, because having a separate arts body keeps it away from council. They are going on the mood of their council if we don't identify them as being important. There's also the arts and cultural policy that's being done, and I believe there's work to involve them in that, where I would hope, because they would be engaging in that. And for our city to have an independent eye over the art in the city without the fickleness of changing officers, that's my concern. So I do support if E2 Trusts want to stand down but their money now, but it does go in the budget for the further years.
Councillor Salinger.
Guess I'm not really too fussed in relation to that, but if we're kind of signalling perhaps a different way of working with them and engaging them in our big infrastructure projects, Rivelink's going to be going on beyond 3 years, I think. That's my understanding. I can't remember the timetable, how many years it's going to be. So what would be happening in year 4 of the plan? We'd be passing across 50,000 and we'd be engaging them and funding them as part of the Riverlink project to support this landscape there. It doesn't quite make sense to me. I think it's one or the other, really.
Okay. Thoughts on, basically we can either fund it from year 4 onwards or not. Yep, and do I need to put it to another vote, or I honestly feel like we're splitting hairs here. I don't think this is particularly... Well, a future council will come in and do what they choose to do. I think it's a bit irrelevant whether you go from year 4 on this, because you'll want a review of how effective it's been. So, Councillor Mitchell?
I think I agree with all of that, and that if we're clear that we will review it before the next long-term plan and perhaps look at other ways of working, then it's really clear to the trust too that they can put a funding bid in for the next long-term plan, and that's a decision for the next council, rather than us having put the money in and then the next council having to make the same decision we're making, whether to take it out for 3 years or 1 year or whatever. I think it would be much clearer to signal to them we want to review and look to work in a different way. That will be done before the next long-term plan, and then they're free to make a budget bid if they feel that they should revert to this.
Okay, so it won't be in the long-term plan from year 4, so it won't be, but it will be clear as part of our policy review that will be looked at in the new way of working. Okay, so we'll put that forward. Okay, so we've gone through the 4 items here. So just to remind everyone, so 1 and 2, yes, yes, and then it's lay on the table for 3, and 4 is yes on the basis of a review before the next LTP. And that can be updated on the relationship with E2 through Councillor Brown's committee. Okay, so I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Edwards, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against, no. Declare that carried. Okay, now moving through to Appendix 2, which, before I should ask, is there anything else in regards to particularly budget savings or reductions? Really important now if there's anything specific that members wanted to give, to voice that now. I know there's been some general comments and feedback, but we're starting to get to the point where we need to be more specific if we want officers to come back with advice. Councillor Salinger.
Question really, when are we going to see the budgets?
I can answer that. So yes, for December, we'll actually prepare the full set of financial statements. So you'll see them all, excuse me, attached. At the moment, you've only got parts of it like the capital program, for example.
And in preparation for, I suppose, those key final decisions, we'll look to have, whether that's through a workshop, which might be a bit more practical, of all of the decisions we've made. What does that mean if we were to not include things and where it looks like we're landing, just to assist in that final draft long-term plan. But no, nothing specific from a budget reduction saving point of view that anyone would like to put forward or ask for more information? No? Okay. So moving through to Appendix 2. Yes, Councillor.
You just added ask for more information, so I did have something I might have just asked offline. But at our workshop, a comparison was given between staff numbers, I think it was in 2018 and end of the last financial year, I seem to recollect. And there was an increase of about 32. I think it would be helpful, and it perhaps partly goes to a question that Councillor Morgan put to the meeting. Would it be possible to have a breakdown by division of where our staff numbers are, FTEs or headcount, or preferably both, in 2018 versus last June? I think it would just be helpful to see where there have been movements. Now, I don't want to make a lot of work, so I'm not suggesting that it's all rationalised and explained, because we've got a completely different structure now than we had then. So I don't want to make that work, but I think it would just be useful, just a bit of a glance, where the staff numbers are. Would that be possible to have?
I'll let Jenny answer, but the challenge is exactly as you've mentioned, is the changes and a lot of changes in the structure of the organisation. So it's going to be, I feel like it'll be quite tricky to make sure that's completely apples with apples. But Jenny.
I mean, we can definitely do the current numbers. That's easy to do, but to do the comparison when the structures change so dramatically will be very challenging, and we'll probably spend a lot of time trying to work out where all the movements have happened.
Just to clarify, I wasn't wanting a comparison. I was just wanting the details from those years without any work done on them, where the staff numbers were back then and where they are.
Yep, I'm sure we can do that. I'm not sure how much detail is available from back in 2018, but we can see what we can prepare.
I think it's just the caveat of the team. I think your degree councillor, it's not asking for a massive piece of work. It's just trying to get some understanding in that. Yep. Okay. Councillor Dyer.
If that could be useful, there was quite a bit of work that was done to council when the review was going through changing the models, and that did talk about old model, new model numbers and stuff. I'm pretty sure that was through public meetings, but the old previous council did have quite a bit of information about the restructure, and that had probably a lot of what you'd be interested in.
Okay. Nothing else? Okay, moving through to the Appendix 2, which is the capital project schedule on page 32. We're going to go through this line by line. No, just joking. Seen a few officers just about fall off their chair. No. We'll take it by exception if there's any questions on the items. Yeah. Demir.
Bottom of page 36, the Capital Event Centre renewal. It just seems that we had a new event centre. It just seems a lot of budget in there.
My understanding is that's ongoing renewals for both the fixtures and fittings and so on. That's a commitment we've got from the lease agreement as well.
Just to add to that, yes, we're contractually obligated to that level of investment.
It would be probably quite good to know. I mean, I think it's when I look at 26, 27, 800,000. So maybe just for members to understand what that is, because that is quite large numbers actually when you look at. So we can come back with that. But if we're contractually obliged, there's not much scope. Anything else from members? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, on page 39, there's still a line in there for community panel projects, for a triennial amount for community panel projects, but that's no longer continuing, right?
Andrea?
My understanding, if I can just quickly jump in, there was some carryover from the prior year, so that's why we've got budgets sitting in the current year, so that was unspent, and we agreed that there'd be no budgets for this 3-year period, so the current year plus the next 2, so that's why there's nothing there. And then there's going to be a review at the as part of the overall representation review, and so we'd left the budgets in there pending those decisions. That's my brief recollection.
Yes, so the money that's there is money that's for projects that have yet to be delivered but were requested by the community panels. But we'll check that that is the case, but I'm pretty sure that's what that is.
Yeah, and I was thinking specifically of the 3 further amounts for the later triennia through the period of the long-term plan. I understand that the previous ones are still to be spent down, but it's those additional ones. I can't remember quite where we got to on that. I thought we were doing away with them.
Just for the triennium was the decision.
Councillor Tupou?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say that I think there's still some committed project funding that hasn't yet been actioned. From it was my first and last meeting with the Eastern Ward Community Funding Panel, as Councillor Mitchell can recall.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Lewis and Councillor Dyer.
40 is only 500 for toilets in the whole long-term plan. 24, 25, my concern there is just the waterfront with the activity that goes on down there, and there was no sign of the multi-use functional toilet that came out of community panel as well.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the Bay Street toilet, which is the changing places toilet, has been delayed by a water pipe issue that we're working through with Wellington Water, and that is on this year's work program to be delivered. There is additional funding for public toilets in the parks. I'm just looking for what it's actually called. There's a large fund which is for renewal of parks and reserves buildings, which also includes public toilets. So that's not the only line of funding that's available for public toilets.
Okay, I believe it was Councillor Dyer, then Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, my question's a traffic one on page 37 under capital projects to meet additional demand. The last one there, subdivision road improvements, is 3.5 million a year. Is that recouped from development contributions, or is this our contribution towards new roads?
So the funding there is our capital expense, so the overall budget. And yes, this is definitely one where we can recoup funding from development contributions, and we've included in the calculation work that's happening.
Okay, Councillor Edwards and Councillor Parkin.
At the risk of earning the enmity of most of Eastbourne, Korohiwa bus barn renewal, some relatively low amounts of money until 2029 and then $500,000. Do we still need to own that building? Is that an asset? Do we get revenue from that from Greater Wellington as a public transport sort of asset? When did we last take a look at that building?
So through you, Mr. Chair, as part of the assets review, that building's on a list of buildings that elected members said they were keen to have a conversation around potentially divesting. And so as soon as the assets review is all through the LTP, we'll have that conversation.
I think that actually answers my question, because it was the Hardwick Smith Lounge renewal, and just noting that that's in the budget there, but is also under the asset review. And yeah, I think it's just worth the public knowing that those are there subject to the asset review.
Okay, nothing else? stuff. Rates revenue increase settings outlined on section F of the report, page 22. So now, yeah, no, just double checking. So it was really a case for this item, if there was any broad feedback. Councillor Parkin.
Sorry, I just spotted something else that I'm thinking that is subject to. No, cancel that.
Okay, all good. Anything else? General feedback? Okay, no, Councillor Dyer.
There is one that's tiny, but it's the defibrillators. We obviously increased the funding for that through our annual plan, but it's dropping back down to 10, 11,000 through the LTP. I'm just wondering if we did talk about increasing it through the LTP, but it's still got those old numbers in there.
Sorry, I didn't hear what that was, though.
The AEDs, defibrillators.
Are you talking about the project list?
Sorry, page 44, under corporate services, second from the bottom.
We can review that and check it against the decisions that were made. When was it? October?
Yeah. So we have moved forward now to the rates revenue increase setting. So that, like I said, that's in section F of the report. So no other general feedback. Okay, so targeted rates and for wastewater and water supply as well. No, okay. Targeted rates for waste, recycling, green waste. No, okay. Proposed fees and charges in Appendix 3, page 45. So again, by exception, if there's any questions, comments. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, a question around sports fields and parks. It's on page 100. And there was quite a lot of controversy around this at the time of our last election a year or so ago, and a review that's taking place in Wellington. And I'm not sure if there's been any kind of feedback or outcome from that process yet, but just noting that in some instances here, there's a doubling or some of them a 60% increase in charges for next year compared to this year. Just wondering for comment from officers on those.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. There's a couple of things going on here. One of them is our own work that's going on around the review of sports fields charges, which early next year you'll have a briefing on to look at how the matrix that we use, which is featured in the papers, how you might change the matrix in the future and what you would emphasise in terms of where subsidy was. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is needing to get the right amount of cost recovery from what it's costing us to provide these services. And in some cases, aquatics being one, which I think we're still working on, we have fallen behind the split required by our revenue and finance policy in terms of cost recovery. So for aquatics, it's a 40% cost recovery, and sometimes we've needed to make adjustments to make sure that we're still fitting our own policy settings. So that's the case with some of these things here, that the cost of some of these services has gone up, and so cost recovery has increased what we need to charge.
Yeah, sorry, and I don't mean to make it a bigger issue than it is, but they are percentage cost recoveries in this report here. So it's not just that the costs have gone up, it's that the percentage we're trying to recover is going up.
I'll have to come back on that one. Let me come back on that one.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Back on page 52, encroachment on City Council land, it says there that we are reviewing the policy. when will that be ready to go in? Is it going to stay the same now and it'll be different again next year?
Sorry, I didn't catch that one. Sorry, I was trying to multitask.
Microphone. Oh, there we go. Just the review of the encroachment policy. I kind of agree with Councillor Lewis. We seem to have been reviewing the encroachment policy for as long as I've been on council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the review of the encroachment policy is on the policy work programme. You may recall it did come up in the previous triennium. There is further work to be done on it, and it is detailed and complex in some respects. Plus, we need to factor in community engagement and particularly some of the community risks. We will do the review, and then any fees charges will be reflected in either an annual plan, likely in an annual plan year. And from memory, we're looking to do that piece of work next year, or at least start it substantially.
Councillor Parkin?
Kia ora. Looking at EV charging on page 96, the idle fees, at the moment, we have them listed for max cost per minute of 50 cents. ChargeNet do $1 per minute if you're not charging, and I suggest we at least raise the maximum to that, but I don't know what Tesla do, and I suggest we allow ourselves to be more in line with that. But also I note that in the... No, that's all right. The second note doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. So we could take that away. If basically the ask there is to ensure we're in line with potentially other private operators of EV charging stations. Yep. Yep. Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, I've got one on dog fees, which is on page 47. The fee for the responsible dog ownership has changed from a property inspection to administration fee. Just want some commentary. Are we no longer inspecting the property? And if we're not, why are we proposing to increase the fee if we're no longer having to go out and inspect the property? It's on page 47.
My understanding of that is that, look, I'm sorry, but I can't answer the bit about whether we actually do go and inspect the property. My understanding is administration fees cover that as well.
Cool, thank you. And then my next question was on a building fee on page 65. Most of the other, all the tiered amounts of how much the building work is have all gone up by a relative similar percentage, but the minor works has just gone up by an astronomical amount over the last few years. In our current LTP, it's 525. We're proposing to increase it to 935. Just wondering why it's such a huge jump for something that inherently in the name is minor works. These are very small works. I think under $2,000 is the cap, I think, or maybe 2,500 is the cap for minor works, and nearly 1,000 just for the consent for it. Just seems out of touch, but
That's on page 65, minor works. Just a moment, I'm catching up with you here. Yep. I just pressed the wrong. Oh, damn. Sorry, I've lost it now. Yeah. 65. Yes, I can see it there. I'm sorry, there's so much detail in that that I
can come back on that.
I need to come back to you, but I have to say that I have just done a minor work at Auckland Council. It cost me $1,900 as a basic fee.
We can come back on that.
I'll come back to you, yeah.
yeah, if we could, like it's something I raised in the annual plan because that was a huge increase, and now it's going up by even more. And then I had one final one, which was on page 94, around the parking charges for the Riverbank car park. We're proposing to increase the hourly rate and the maximum daily charge, but keeping the monthly pass at the same. Just wondering if that's an error, or is that our intention that we will keep the monthly pass the same despite the other two going up? This is page 94.
Probably best we review that and come back to you on that. Yeah.
Someone's cut me off. Are we proposing as well to change from, like, a lot of them current charges have Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. The new conditions are all done away with the days. Are we looking at charging the full week now, or are we still sticking with Monday to Friday? It's just a...
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So talking about the Riverbank car park is in 7 days.
all the fee, all the zones. Like page 93, page 94. Under the current proposal, it has Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, Saturday and Sundays, P120 zones, no charge. And the new conditions just says 9 till 5, no mention of the days. I'm just wondering if that's just a typo type thing, or are we saying Saturday and Sunday will be paid parking now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we were proposing paid parking Monday to Sunday.
And then one final question on parking is just the fines for overstaying. Is that set by legislation, or are we able to set it?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else on the fees and charges? Yep.
Sorry, just it might be one for Alison. Just all those fees that are there, they do have gone up by a lot. So yeah, if you could cover those as well, please, at page, what is it, 59, 58 and 59.
Okay. Okay, we'll move forward now. And, sorry, is there?
Sorry, what was it?
Don't want to go. The request was the price increases. Did you cover that for pages 58 and 59 in resource consents?
They have got, the hourly rate has been put up, and what it is an assessment of the number of hours that are put into it. But the hourly rate has only gone up about $20 from last year. And these are estimates of how much it actually takes to do those applications. So what was it that you were wanting me to check on it? Because this is cost recovery, remember?
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so we're moving forward now to the recommendations which capture our conversations. So are you ready, Kate? That wasn't a repeat of our council meeting, was it? Far more unruly.